to the Living with Narcissists podcast, where the first recommendation is don't. But unfortunately, that's not always possible. So this is your haven for validation, insight, strategies, and resources. So let's get started. Welcome, I'm Carrie, and this is the Living with Narcissists podcast. In the last episode, we described codependence as a dysfunctional relationship dynamic where one person assumes the role of the giver, sacrificing their own needs and well-being for the sake of the other, the taker. In today's episode, we will explore the thought patterns and the behavior patterns of the codependent giver and the narcissistic taker and how they have developed. But before we dive in, I want to mention that as I explained in the previous episode, codependence is not a clinical diagnosis, so it's not listed in the DSM-5. The clinical diagnosis in the DSM-5 for the codependent victim is dependent personality disorder, which is a cluster C personality disorder. And the clinical diagnosis in the DSM for the narcissistic taker is a cluster B personality disorder, which is the narcissism category. And don't forget, these disorders can also occur alongside other personality disorders, addictions, and behavioral problems, which we learned is called comorbidity. So with that said, let's talk about how codependence develops in childhood. One situation is when the parents, usually one, or if you hit the jackpot, two, are narcissistic and grandiose. They have a parenting style that is transactional, which means the parent focuses on what they want now and how that enhances their self-image, as opposed to focusing on the child's needs and long-term development. These parents teach their children that they're supposed to render a service and to perform for the parent's benefit. Love is transactional, based on the fulfillment of the parent's dreams, wishes, and grandiose fantasies. When a child can realize the parent's dreams and fantasies, in return, the child will receive affection, attention, approval, and investment from the parents. However, when the child does not fulfill the parent's desires, the child can receive punishment, often that could be seen as extreme and could be described as capital punishment. This parenting style cultivates fear, anger, and resentment in the child. And if the child falls from grace, the narcissistic parent can replace that child with another child in the family. This can cause a lot of competitiveness among the children who are vying with each other for approval and limited resources. The competitiveness adds to the volatility of the family as it creates conflict and causes fracturing of familial relationships due to resentment and lack of trust. The children are competing to be the most favored child, sometimes called the golden child, as a survival skill to obtain the most resources, affection, attention, approval, and investment from the parents. So the child is hurt and in pain from being mistreated, for not receiving unconditional love, and feeling unsure that their needs will be met, so they harbor feelings of rage. But the child can't punish the offending parent, so there's no recourse for the mistreatment the child receives. Their anger is so repressed that the child won't allow themselves to even think bad things about the parent. And in adulthood, it's not uncommon for abused children to say they had a good childhood. They're not lying. They are in denial about the nature of their upbringing. Their anger is so repressed that the child won't allow themselves to even think bad things about the parent. And in adulthood, it's not uncommon for these abused children to say they had a good childhood. They're not lying. They're in denial about the nature of their upbringing. This anger can manifest in impulsive external displays of aggression by acting out, or This anger manifests in aggression that is internalized. So that anger, that rage, is either directed inward toward themselves or outward at other people who stand in for the bad parent. And if you're the spouse, you will receive the outpouring of rage that has been repressed. And because the narcissist is in denial, they can't see that this is displaced, redirected anger that was cultivated in childhood from abusive narcissistic parenting. In adulthood, if the anger is directed outward, a psychopath or a passive-aggressive negativistic person is created, both of which are in the cluster B antisocial personality disorder category. However, if the anger is internalized, a masochist or someone with a depressive illness is created. So that's one possible solution. Another possible solution is when the parent is unavailable and neglects the child's needs. The child can't love the parent because the parent isn't there. So they can't receive the love from the child and reciprocate. The parent is gone, but the child still has this reservoir of love that the child wants to direct to someone. So under these circumstances, one solution is for the child to become self-oriented and access this self-contained reservoir of love and direct that inward at themselves, which creates a narcissist. The other possible solution is when the child becomes other-focused and directs their self-contained reservoir of love outward towards other people, which creates the codependent. These parenting styles lead to pathology, of course. You don't want to become a psychopath, you don't want to become a narcissist, and you certainly don't want to become a doormat codependent. These coping skills arrest personal growth, so they're self-defeating. They don't allow a person to mature and grow. These coping strategies cause an inner conflict because the adult is unable or unwilling to grow up, because they're afraid of incurring the wrath of the parent if they do not fulfill the parent's expectations. So the narcissist, the psychopath, and the codependent all have an inner child and inner parent that are in constant conflict. Early in their development, they merged, they were engulfed by their caretaker so completely that in adulthood, in their subconscious and sometimes conscious mind, there is a battle between the punitive parent and an internal, vulnerable child who desperately craves the attention, affection, and approval of the parent, kind of like the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other. The angel says you are lovable, but only if you fulfill the inner parent's expectations. The devil on the other shoulder says you are unlovable. No one could ever love you. You can never meet the requirements of the punitive parent. Round and round they go, ruminating consciously and subconsciously over the question, am I good enough? Each suppresses that query with opposing strategies. The narcissist taker is self-focused, looking for narcissistic supply to affirm their sense of self-important grandiosity. The codependent giver is other-focused, hoping to create a sense of security by abandoning themselves, sacrificing their own needs and well-being for the narcissistic taker. If you like my content, please choose to follow, subscribe, or provide a rating so I can share this information with more people and you don't miss out on future episodes. If you would like to support the podcast with a small monthly donation, you can do that through the listener support link in the show notes. If you'd like to send me comments or questions, you can do that through the comments link on the Spotify app. I hope to hear from you. Thank you for joining me. I hope this information is helpful. I look forward to sharing more in the future. Have a wonderfully peaceful day. Till next time.